Hey, I'm Dave, and I am here to talk about Dave's Picks Volume 46. Hard to believe we're already at number 46. Always blows my mind every time we get a little higher. Numbers heading towards number 50 next year. That would come out in May of 2024. We got number 50 coming up. So a lot of incredible music coming in the next little bit. I'm going to tweak the camera a little bit. There we are. Hope the wind isn't too bad or the waves, but I think this new microphone and camera should be okay. So here to talk about the new Dave's Picks, number 46. If you're watching this, you probably already know that it is from September 9th, 1972 at the Hollywood Palladium. An incredible show right at the beginning of kind of three legs of the fall tour of 1972. They did the first leg, which really started in Boston on September 15th, ran through October 2nd, and then the middle of October with the shows in St. Louis, which were released as part of the St. Louis box set, and a few other great shows in October. And then they took a couple weeks off, and then in November they came back for another 2 weeks of kind of Midwest, no, I guess, what do you call that? South, like Texas and Oklahoma and Wichita, Kansas, which I guess is Midwest. Just an incredible period for the Grateful Dead. And our new show, the Dave's Picks Volume 46 show, is, I mean, it couldn't be between two, well, actually a few greater shows than it is. It's pretty much equidistant. It's right in the middle of Veneta, Oregon on August 27th and September 21st at the Philadelphia Spectrum. And lots of other great shows in there as well. There's the Baltimore show, which was released as Dick's Picks Volume 23 with that big other one. The Philadelphia show with the big Dark Star Morning Dew, which you're probably familiar with. The final Dick's Picks, number 36. And then, of course, Veneta, Oregon. Folsom Field, which was, some of that was included on the Dick's Picks 36. So just a really incredible period for the Grateful Dead. And amongst all these great shows, the Dead find themselves in LA for 2 nights at the Hollywood Palladium, which is still there. I mentioned this on the radio on the Sirius a little while ago, that I have often every time I'm in LA, I look at the calendar at the Palladium to see if there are any shows that I might be fortunate enough to go and see, and unfortunately there's never a show there for me to go see. But hopefully someday, because I'd love to see inside the Palladium. So the Dead, about 3 months before this show, these 2 shows in Hollywood, the Dead had played Hollywood on June 17th of 1972, the first show back in the US after the Europe 72 tour, a show that would end up being Pigpen's final show performing with the Grateful Dead. So that was on June 17th. It's a good show. It's a very good show. There's no board tape of it. There's a very good audience tape. I've heard the Grateful Dead perform Stella Blue for the first time at that show. They also play it at our show here on September 9th at the Palladium. So they went from the Hollywood Bowl in June, big venue, I think it's about 18,000, to the Palladium is under 3,000, and they did 2 nights. The second show features Dark Star, the first night features the other one. And that's kind of the centerpiece of the second set here. But there's so much good music. Now, coming back from Europe, I think all the Deadheads in LA must have known about the Europe tour. It was quite well discussed in the media. The Dead had played Europe. And I think by September, everyone would have known that soon would be the Europe 72 album coming out, the 3LP set. And with that in mind, the first set of this show is largely comprised of material, not entirely, but some of the material, as with the second set, the material that they would debut on record in the on the Europe 72 record. There's also a lot of the newer solo material from Bob's and Jerry's respective solo records, songs like Sugar-Ree and Loser and Black-Throated Wind, and the typical for the time 18 or 19 minute version of Playing in the Band. The first set opens with some Chuck Berry, Promised Land, and ends with some Chuck Berry, which Around and Around wouldn't have been too uncommon, but at this show they end the first set with Johnny Be Good. It's pretty amazing. Second set begins, as so many second sets that we know from the 80s and 90s, but not so familiar, not so common in the 1970s. The second set opens with China Rider, which at the time was generally included earlier in the first set, middle of the first set, end of the first set, but not as a second set opener. So the second set features more of the Europe 72 material. Now, everybody at the shows up to this point would have known about China Cat Sunflower, I'm sure, because of Aoxomoxoa, but China Rider hadn't been committed to vinyl yet until Europe 72. So to hear that combination, unless you were an active showgoer and fortunate enough to catch it, you might not have known about China Rider. So it's a pretty cool thing to hear it at this show, and then a few weeks later, Europe 72 comes out, and there's the recorded version from Europe. Just sounds incredible. There's a Jack Straw in here, and he's gone, of course, with the big launching pad into the big Other One jam. Now, a few minutes ago I mentioned the Baltimore Other One, which was about 8 days later on September 17th. And at this show, that was about 36 minutes long. This one is kind of the precursor to that, also about 36 minutes long. And the thing I love about an Other One that's this long, it gives them so many places to explore, and that's exactly what they've done here. They've it's incredibly psychedelic at times, it's very powerful at times. The verses are sung, with real commitment and command by Bob Weir, great background vocals by Phil and Jerry, and Adonna's at this show, of course. Just a really incredible Other One. I mean, I've listened to this one countless times for the last 20 years or so. This was a show I didn't know until I started working with the Grateful Dead in 1999. And what I was doing then, and shortly after Dick passed primarily, I was listening to a lot of the shows that had not yet been released and shows that didn't really circulate that much. Now, the didn't circulate became a much lesser criteria for our releases because our focus is primarily and always has been on great music. And if it happens to be something that didn't circulate very widely, that was always a bonus. Now in 2023, most things in one way or another circulate, but in this case, I had never heard this 20 years ago, 23 years ago, 24 years ago. But now that I've heard it for almost a quarter century, I am blown away by how good this Other One is, and the whole second set. Like I say, the China Rider, one of these real peppy little Friend of the Devil's. This is before they slowed it down in 1976. Those fun little American Beauty arrangement of Friend of the Devil. And like I say, there's a great Jack Straw, great He's Gone. By this point, He's Gone was really a launching pad for jams. It wasn't primarily, it wasn't the standalone song that it had mostly been in Europe on the spring tour, in the Europe tour. But by this time, they would jam out of it before going into Truckin' or Drums or the Other One. And this one is a really cool one. I love this jam sequence. It's so good. And then there's the typical rock and rolling ending with a great Casey Jones and a One More Saturday Night. Very typical of the time. And I remember this Casey Jones. I've listened to a few Casey Joneses while running. And there's a certain speed as the song builds up pace. And I mentioned this recently on the air that as Casey Jones speeds up, my running gait had to speed up to the point that I was getting a bit winded because it's a breakneck speed. And I love this version of Casey Jones. Really great stuff. So the Palladium, if you get a chance, take a look online at the Hollywood Palladium because it is a spectacular little venue. It's kind of got this rounded ceiling, low ceiling too. It's not a theater in terms of a sloped seating. It's more like an open floor with a balcony thing around it. And not even about, it's just like a raised area towards the back. And I can just imagine, I believe both of these shows were sold out, how into it these fans must have been to see the Dead. Now, they had just played the Palladium a bit over a year earlier, of course, August 5th and 6th of 1971. Hard to Handle, you might know from Fallout from the Phil Zone, but a lot of those shows, those two shows, have been released through the Road Trip series and other releases. So you might know about the Hollywood 71 shows. These ones, I feel, while they might not have the singular moment of the Hard to Handle, which is frankly quite unbeatable, I think ounce for ounce, the September 72 shows are a stronger pair of shows, and I wouldn't be surprised if the second night is released someday. Nothing imminent. I know we talk about this a lot when people ask, will we release this show or that show? I don't know. If it's not the one being released right now, the answer is probably no, only because we don't have a master list of future releases. But if it's a great show, which it is, the next night, that hasn't been released, there's a very good chance it will be released someday. And that also features David Crosby, our good friend David Crosby, who recently passed away earlier in 2023, sadly. He sits in at that show. So that would be, I think, a nice tribute to David Crosby. It's a really, really great Dark Star, and you can hear some really interesting stuff that David Crosby is doing in that. So if you hear those? Oyster catchers. If you subscribe to the Dave's Pick series in 2023, it'll be coming. Probably the end of April, first week of May. If you didn't, as we've mentioned, they do tend to sell out pretty quickly, sometimes within a few days, sometimes it takes a few weeks, but if you're interested in fall 1972 Grateful Dead, which we imagine you probably are, because it's really, really good, I would recommend getting it sooner than later before it's sold out. And if you also subscribe, you'll be getting the bonus disc that will come with Dave's Picks Volume 46, our 2023 subscribers exclusive bonus disc, which is some amazing music from a couple of shows on either end of this, from Folsom Field September 3rd, and then at Roosevelt Stadium, a couple of stadium shows in East Coast and a well, I don't know, Colorado's Midwest, West, at Folsom Field, and Jersey City at Roosevelt Stadium. Both of those shows in their entirety have some recording problems, but there was quite a bit of salvageable material that was also A+ material, and that's what the bonus disc is. But anyhow, that's for subscribers. If you subscribed, it'll be coming. If you didn't, that's okay. Dave's Picks Volume 46, the entire September 9th, 1972 show at the Palladium in Hollywood. A really, I think, a magnificent show. And like I say, it's right in the middle of Veneta, Oregon on August 27th, which was only, 12, 13 days earlier. And then 12 days later, the Philadelphia Spectrum show with that big Dark Star Morning Dew, amongst other great music, on September 21st. The 3 nights in Jersey City at the end of the tour, towards the end of the tour, at the Stanley Theater. The Waterbury, Connecticut shows, the Boston shows, September 15, 16. There's a lot of good music on this tour. And this is, while it's not technically really part of that East Coast tour, it's not East Coast at all, but it's not really part of that tour, but it is magnificent nonetheless. So do check it out. Head over to dead.net, unless maybe this is where you're watching it. And the show is available now, probably not for too long. It's Dave's Picks Volume 46, September 9th, 1972 at the Palladium in Hollywood. Do check it out. Thanks for watching, and thanks for, sticking around and checking out these Dave's Picks. We love doing them, and I guess you still love them, because we still love doing them. And we've got plenty of great ones coming up. 47 is in the can. We've just literally this week, as I'm recording this, in the middle of April, started working on number 48 and putting a lot of thought into 49 and 50 as we go forward, but those are quite a ways off, so nothing is locked in there, not even close. But we have some good ideas. We also, little teaser, whatever you want to call it, as you probably know, we always do something pretty major box setty every year, and we do have a great thing happening this year, plus some other very cool things. So stay tuned to dead.net, sign up for the newsletter, because it's an exciting year. I say this every year because it is. I'm not just kind of being a sales guy. I'm telling you that this is a tremendous, another tremendous year to be a Deadhead. If you like collecting Grateful Dead music, which I certainly do. Thanks for watching. I'm Dave, and check out Dave's Picks 46, September 9th, 1972, Hollywood Palladium. I've got a remote control, so I'm going to try and shut the camera off and see how that works. Thanks a lot, and head to dead.net and check out Dave's Picks 46.